just want to open the evening by first and foremost thanking all of you for coming to join us with the panel tonight. By way of introduction, my name is Mike Sacco, and I'm the Assistant Director of Student Formation here at Boston College. I also sit on the Church in the 21st Century Advisory Council, and along with the students on the council and Dawn Overstreet, we've kind of put our heads together, and for the last couple weeks, or a few weeks actually, been working on this panel. I just want to acknowledge briefly before we turn over to the panel the students who've been a crucial part of the logistics behind all of this. Grace Simmons, Patrick Downs, David Sue, and Tina Correa. None of this could have happened without their ideas, without their public relations machines and their organizations. So as much as we're going to appreciate the panels, those are the folks who kind of got the ball rolling. My job here tonight, before we move on to the panel, is rather easy. I'm your guide, if you will, to try to answer this question, dude, where's my faith? Perhaps, maybe more accurately, dude, what is my faith? And what we've done is we've gathered 4 students from 4 different faith perspectives. These are them. They're sitting right next to me. What we've been up to for the past couple of weeks is I've been meeting with them, most of them on more than one occasion, and they've really been beautifully honest and letting me ask all sorts of questions about where their hearts and what their faith is. They've agreed to come up here and sit in front of their classmates and all these video cameras and share that with all of us tonight. Before I introduce them, or rather let them introduce themselves, I just want to maybe put into frame context of what our idea was about this evening, because it could go in a whole bunch of different ways. We hope this evening is personal. We hope that this evening you learn a little bit about these folks' faith, from where they're coming from, what their relationship with their God is, perhaps what's in their heart. What this evening isn't, and what we've not really asked them, is to prepare formal papers or statements to kind of reiterate some dogmatic themes of their faiths. And it's not to say that that wouldn't be interesting, but we just thought as a group that we'd rather have a discussion just about what their faith means to them personally. I tell you that for a couple reasons. One, so you're not looking for it, and perhaps second, because in my conversations with all the panelists, they were all clear that they're not experts. They wouldn't want to pretend to be experts. And they're not speaking as a formal representative of each of their faith traditions. Rather, they're speaking as a student, a Boston College student. So tonight, as we begin our presentation, I'll have some formal questions. We'll do that for a while, and then we're going to open up to you to kind of follow up. I'll explain a little bit more about the questioning phase here in a minute. We bring to you the personal stories of these 4 students. We have Anna, a Muslim student, Chris, a non-denominational Protestant, Genevieve, a Catholic student, and Justin, a Jewish student. So what I'm going to ask them to do to get us started is to perhaps start by introducing themselves, share with us where you're from, what you're studying, what your faith tradition is, and I can tell you that they have not been given the questions before the panel. What caused you to agree to be a part of this panel? And once again, you'll probably hear me kind of interrupting them from time to time, too. We're going to follow the 5 B's of public speaking. Be brief, brother, be brief. So, Anna, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Hi, my name's Anna Rupani. Wait, can y'all hear me? Good. My name's Anna Rupani. I'm a sophomore in the Carroll School of Management. I'm from Irving, Texas. Background, family's from Pakistan. My major is human resources. I agreed to be on this panel because Grace Simmons asked me, and she's a good friend, and I thought it would be cool to do something. I wanted to actually do something like this through UGBC, and C21 was doing it, so that's great. Anything else that I missed?
That's great for now.
Awesome.
Thank you, Anna.
My name's Chris Birch. I'm an international studies major. I'm pre-med with hopes to someday go to medical school. I come from Santa Barbara, California, which is in Southern California. And I was also invited to be on this panel, and I was excited about it because faith is a huge part of my life, and I think it's something important to talk about.
Hi, my name is Genevieve Dorr. I am a senior in the School of Arts and Sciences, double majoring in international studies and theology. I come from the Bible Belt of the South, and being Catholic down there is definitely something that I think is a very different experience from probably the rest of the country. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to participate tonight, is share my story, but also kind of just to shed light. A lot of times Catholics talk about their problems within the Catholic Church and have disagreements with it, and I really wanted to participate to kind of voice my frustrations along with why I remain to choose to be Catholic. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
My name is Justin Barrasso. It's a little loud, I'm sorry. I'm a common theology major from West Peabody, Massachusetts, and why I'm here, I don't know, I think it's an interesting opportunity. Anytime we share and listen to one another's background and culture, I just think it's an interesting opportunity, A, to learn something about yourself, and B, to learn about others. So I look forward to speaking tonight and hopefully speaking with you guys afterward, too.
If I can ask maybe to make our panelists feel a little bit more comfortable, let's give them a round of applause just for getting up here and doing that. All right. Well, to start off the discussion, to really understand where a person is with their faith, they kind of have to get you have to get a little bit of a historical perspective about the faith itself. So what we've asked, and this is a feat that is a challenge for everyone, is to try to perhaps prepare a layman's guide to your faith, if you will, a faith for dummies opening paragraph of what these prospective faiths really are about, some of their central cores. Now again, following the 5 B's, we're going to ask them to do this very quickly. But that's where we're going to start, and we're just going to, it'll be one of the only questions that we ask all 4 of our panelists to respond to, and we're going to open up with Genevieve. Genevieve, you're Catholic. What's that all about?
Well, I guess I could start with in the beginning. I'm not going to go through the whole Bible. Basically, the 2 things that I want to say about Catholicism is, one, we are centered around the belief of Jesus Christ as a part of the Trinity. The Trinity is a construct that the Catholic Church uses sort of to describe the person of God as a 3-way relationship of love, which can be kind of confusing, so I'll talk about that a little bit later. But so you have Jesus Christ, the incarnated, part of God that came to earth and died for our sins. Then the other thing I want to add is currently in the Catholic Church today, and has been for the past 2,000 years, the Catholic Church is organized into a system of hierarchy, which is a little bit different from a lot of other Christian faiths, because the Pope, who resides in Rome in the Vatican, he is the apostolic successor to the apostles, which the apostles were the guys that like to hang out with Jesus and were his main men. They hung out, and they were the ones that first listened to the word of Jesus Christ, who is the incarnated part of the Trinity. And we kind of believe all of our dogma has then since come from the teachings of Jesus Christ. Our tradition has come from the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, which includes the Pope and a series of bishops, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, I could go on forever, so that'll be it for now.
That's it for now. Anna.
Yes.
You're a Muslim student. Can you explain a little bit about your faith tradition?
Yeah. I guess it all started kind of with Muhammad was like the main thing. Muhammad was revealed the Quran, which would be the holy book for Muslims, in the month of Ramadan, which ended on Saturday. And he was revealed the book, and then when he passed on, there's a split in Islam where people believe that Muhammad was the last prophet. Well, all Muslims believe that Muhammad was the last prophet, and there's a split where they believed that Muhammad appointed, I guess, appointed his cousin to carry on the message of the Quran to and so that split happened, and the people that didn't believe in his cousin, whose name was Ali, were called Sunnis, and the people that did believe in him were called Shias. And then Sunnis believed in the teachings of Muhammad and the Quran, and the Shias believed in Ali. After that split, the people that believed in Ali believed that he would appoint someone else of heredity, because Ali's also Muhammad's cousin, so it would stay in the blood and stay in the family. So Ali appointed his son, and so on and so forth, and he was called an imam. After that, there is the 6th imam, and there was a split there, and they're called the Sixers. The same concept. Someone believed that so-and-so's son should have been appointed rather than the other son, and then another split happened at the 12th Imam, and then people who believed in the 12th Imam kept on believing, and we are, like, who I am personally is called a Shia, Imami, Ismaili, Nizari Muslim, because the 6th Imam...
Can you say that again?
Yeah, sorry. The Shia, Imami, Ismaili, Nizari Muslims. Shia because of the split. Imami because I believe in an Imam. Ismaili because the 6th Imam's name was Ismail. Nizari because the 12th Imam's name was Nizar. And Muslim because I am a Muslim. And the people that believed in Ismail and still currently believe in a living Imam, like as the head of my specific faith would be Ismailis, which is what I am. And I guess that's kind of a quick rundown of where I come from.
You guys got that?
Sorry.
Thank you. She did a wonderful job with that. I got like the hour-and-a-half version the other day. She's wonderful. Let's turn it over to Justin.
I'll just give you a basic background of, I'll try to give you a quick guide to what Jews believe. It's I guess, a far difficult question, but they all are. You see, Judaism has no real dogma. There's no formal set of beliefs that one must hold to really be a Jew. In Judaism, I guess you could say that actions are far more important than beliefs, although there's certainly a place for belief within Judaism. In the most traditional sense, there are 13 principles of faith. I won't read them all for you right now. If you have more questions later, feel free. But things like God exists, God is eternal, God is one and unique, things like that. But just basic and very general principles. But interesting thing, unlike many other religions, Judaism, it doesn't focus a whole lot on abstract or cosmological concepts. Although Jews have certainly considered the nature of God, man, the universe, life, and afterlife at great length, there's no mandated, official, or really even definitive belief on these subjects. There is a lot of substantial room for personal opinion, which hopefully I'll do a nice job of tonight. But as I said before, Judaism is more concerned really about actions than beliefs.
Thank you. And Chris, how would you describe yourself?
I think the best way to describe myself is a non-denominational Protestant, and I'll deal with Protestant, and then I'll deal with non-denominational. First, pretty much everything Genevieve said about Jesus and about the Scriptures and about God is all true, and we Protestants believe that also. But I guess the faith tradition of Protestantism broke off when Luther and then Calvin broke off from the Catholic Church, and for various reasons that we can talk about later. And three things that stand out to me in Protestantism is that I believe that Jesus is the only mediator between me and God. That's one thing. The second thing is that we have a heavy emphasis on the Scriptures, the teachings of Jesus and the Old Testament as well, and all the other letters that are in there and stuff. And I also believe that salvation is a gift from God by His grace alone, that we don't work for our salvation and that we fall short of any attempt of working for our salvation. Now, non-denominational. I'm non-denominational, and that's not where I specifically grew up in the beginning of my church experience, but that's what I am now. And I guess that would mean that we don't have any ties to any formal organization or hierarchy.
You're kind of like a free agent?
Yeah, like a free agent, definitely. And it makes me nervous sometimes, for sure, to be a free agent. But specific within the Protestant faith, I guess we don't have any line coming down from Calvin or Luther. We are an independent church. However, I would say that non-denominational churches are kind of a denomination in and of themselves these days in our culture. We have our own culture and pretty much our own faith belief systems. And that would be it, I guess.
Great. Thank you all. Well, I think they've done a great job of giving us just a taste or a flavor about the different faith traditions of which they come. But to understand, I think, a little bit more about their personal perspective, we need to focus on a topical area of your own personal faith formation. And in that, when I say faith formation, I'm really talking about family history, the way you celebrate, the way you were raised, maybe perhaps a regional culture that you were raised in. And when you think about that area, I want to start by perhaps addressing Anna. Anna, when we spoke earlier, you kind of jokingly said that you perhaps could be compared to the pastor's daughter. Can you give us an insight on how you grew up, what your family situation was like as a Muslim?
My family, my parents and my sisters moved to the States 20 years ago, so right before I was born, to Houston, Texas. And I think right after I was born, my dad was asked to take a position at what is like a mosque. We Ismailis actually don't call it a mosque. Mosque is a place of worship for Muslims. We call it a Jamaat Khana. And my dad was asked to be one of the head positions at the Jamaat Khana. There's two actually, Mukhi Sahib and Kamar Sahib. My dad was asked to be the Kamar Sahib, and it's a couple, so it's like the husband and wife and the husband and wife. So I guess
when you say side of the mosques, what's that mean?
Huh?
When you say that there's two different sides.
No, there's two different like heads of the mosque.
Okay.
Or Jamaat Khana. They were asked. My parents were asked, and so I guess ever since I was little, I've had faith in Islam thrown at me in the sense that I've always been raised with it. And then it's not, I guess, it's not a paid position or anything. They're regular human beings. They work, they have a job from 9 to 5 or whatever, and then they come home, get ready, and go to Jamaat Khana. And that's fully voluntary, and it's every day. And they do that on outside of that, and it's a 3-year thing, and they can be asked after the 3 years to redo it. They usually end up choosing different people time and time again. Currently, that was in Houston. Currently, my parents are also now the Mukhi Sahibs, which would be the head of the Jamaat Khana in Dallas. And there are, I think, about 75 Jamaat Khanas in the states, and there's not one in each state either. Texas alone has like 20. So I guess I've always grown up with that fact of being Muslim and like had it taught to me. We had Saturday school in Dallas instead of Sunday school, and I went to it every Saturday since 1st grade through 12th grade. And it was something we were taught about our faith. We were taught, we had, books to read that taught us about Muhammad and taught us about Ali and taught us about what Islam was. And then as I grew older, 7th and 8th grade and so on, it was more of a discussion about who you are through your faith and like what Islam is to you and how you how you practice it rather, and how you feel comfortable with it and how your life is through it, how you what you do to practice Islam in everyday life. Does that answer?
I think that's great.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna. Genevieve, you had already said in your introduction that you're a Southern girl.
I am a Southern girl.
We're here at Boston College in a very Catholic region of the country. You grew up as a Southern Catholic girl. That being said, what kind of environment, as you think about your faith formation, what did your family, what did your Catholic faith community in Nashville, how did that interplay with how you learned about your faith and how you grew up?
The diocese where I grew up, the diocese being the, like I said, hierarchy, the area, it's just what the church calls the area where the church is and where the bishop has his, I guess, reign over, if you want to call it like that. The diocese where I grew up is technically considered a missionary diocese, which means the percentage of Catholics that live in the diocese is much smaller to the actual population of the diocese. So I would say growing up, especially in Nashville, in the South, I would say Catholicism is much more on the defensive. I can remember countless times where I'd just be at restaurants or out at the movies or something, and someone would come up to me and ask me, "Have you been saved?" And I would reply to them, "Well, yes, of course, I'm a Catholic." And they'd kind of look at me and roll their eyes and then shudder and walk away. And I never really understood that until I got much older and, discovered the differences between the different faiths that exist in the South. But growing up, my parents put me into a private Catholic school taught by the Dominican nuns, which I love the Dominicans dearly. It's an amazing order, but they're also very, very conservative. And so my upbringing was very much by the book. You want to talk about the catechism? I brought it with me to college. That was probably, I'm not kidding. That was...
Those are her friends over there.
The catechism and the Bible were what my early Catholic formation was based upon, as well as strict adherence to what the Vatican had taught. And
Was it fun?
at times, I mean, in retrospect, at times, at the time when I was actually experiencing it, it was awesome. I had a great group of youth group friends that, on top of the 5 days a week that I had classes in school about Catholic theology, I would also participate in like life teen groups, which were like CCD classes at my parish. It was fun. I mean, it gave me a strong community in which I grew up in a system where everybody believed the same thing because we knew we had to believe the same thing. It was definitely a lot different experience, though, from being here in the North, let me tell you that.
Great. Thank you. Justin, what's your last name?
My last name is Barrasso.
And that's not obviously a traditional Jewish name, is it?
I don't think it always kind of stuck out in the temple when my family and I went. Yeah.
Can you perhaps share a little bit about your family history? And specifically, I'm going to ask that after you say that, you focus some on the celebrations or the holidays and how you celebrate them in your household.
Definitely. And it's interesting, too, as I said, my name is Justin Barrasso. My father is Catholic. My mother is Jewish. So it's interesting. They were the first in their families to kind of break the religious barriers, which has been great. I mean, they loved each other, and when they had children, they decided that, I think they looked at religion somewhat like reading. That I mean, they would give their children an opportunity to read, to have religion in the background, and later, when they aged and got a little bit older, if they wanted to continue it, they'd be happy with that. If not, at least they had the background. So I've pursued my religion a little bit. It's been interesting. Kindergarten through 5th grade, went to public school. There were a handful of Jewish students in the class with me, so that was interesting. But from 6th grade to the time to, I guess I'm in 16th grade right now as a senior in college, I've been in Catholic school. So it's been a little confusing along the way. But the first time I remember going to parochial school in 6th grade, we prayed in the morning, we prayed in the afternoon, we prayed at the end of the day. Thinking, geez, these Catholics pray a lot. But it's been interesting to learn both. I guess you could say the interfaith aspects. I mean, we always celebrated the Catholic holidays with my father's side, and that was fascinating. And I mean, it's tough. Every Jewish kid should celebrate Christmas, or I just think it's fun. The whole background behind it. But I won't get too offbeat. But it was interesting. It was definitely interesting growing up in an interfaith household.
Can you talk to the Jewish holidays that your family celebrated? Can you talk about what some of them are and what the tradition is behind them?
Definitely. I guess people look at Christmas as being obviously, the pinnacle of Catholic holidays, and Hanukkah falls right around that time, depending on how the calendar falls. But Hanukkah's not even that big a holiday. The two biggest holidays are Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year, and Yom Kippur falls that after. It's interesting how they fall, because Rosh Hashanah comes first. It's the New Year. It's your opportunity to say to God, just like in the American New Year, you can make resolutions, ways you can do certain things better. You can pray more. You can interact better with people. I mean, you can basically love more. And after that, a week later, comes Yom Kippur. And the interesting thing about that is Yom Kippur, so you have your New Year one week. The next week you have your chance to atone for all your sins, because the way it was is, first and foremost, God wants to hear that you're ready to start anew. You're ready to start a new year. Then a week later, you come to the realization that, hey, I can't do this with all the baggage from the past year. Let me atone for my sins and move on from there, and move on and hopefully have a successful year. So that's been the holidays. And although the ride has been interesting and it's been confusing along the way, the interfaith ride, there's been a lot of love in my life. I think at the very end of the day, God manifests himself through love through others. So that's been the biggest part of my life.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Chris, we spoke over the last couple weeks, and your tradition and your faith journey is a little bit different perhaps than the rest of the members of the panel, because whereas they grew up in families and had almost a linear path, you kind of made a bit more of a choice perhaps. Can you talk a little bit about your path to becoming a Christian and some of your own defining moments along that path?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
I should also start with my family, as everyone else has started with their family. My parents are both Christians, and they're both Protestants. I don't know what denomination they come from, so that kind of shows how I was brought up, I guess. When I was really young, when I was just a little tyke, I used to go to church a lot. I have 2 older brothers. We'd go with the family and stuff. We went to a Lutheran church, and as we grew older and we got more involved in sports activities and things, my older brothers especially, I was still pretty young, we stopped going to church because that stuff just kind of happened on Sunday. And my family's, we're all adrenaline junkies, and so it kind of took priority. And so that was my younger years of my church experience, going to a Lutheran church. And we stopped going for a while, and I think what I spoke to you about is in 7th and 8th grade, I started to become one of those, stereotypical bad children, making terribly bad choices. I started doing drugs and drinking at an age that was way earlier than I should have been doing those things, or if I should ever be doing those things. And it led to a lot of bad choices, like stopping going to school, stopping going to water polo practice, getting caught by my parents a lot, getting caught at school a lot, and life just sucked, pretty much. I was confined by school, I was confined by water polo, I was confined by my parents. And into 9th grade, the option I was given, well, it wasn't an option. What I was told is that I could go to school, and I could go to water polo practice, and I could go to this youth group that my older brother had kind of started getting involved with. And for those of you who don't know, a youth group is just where the kids hang out that go to church, either during the week or on Sundays. And I started going to youth group because I wasn't forced to go, but when you don't have anything else to do, it kind of starts to look attractive. But when I would go, it really sucked. There are these people there that they just weren't my type of people. But long story short, I had a bunch of different experiences through Bible study / small group at my house with an older mentor that was in the church that put a lot of love into my life. And I had a very distinct experience at a Christian retreat in my sophomore year of high school, and I really felt really much in my head and in my heart that the Holy Spirit was speaking to me. And I should probably explain that. I felt a confidence and a peace to run after the Christian faith, to put Jesus first and foremost in my life, and to find Jesus in all of the things that I do in my life. And what that exactly means, I haven't totally found out yet. And I learn more and more every year what that means in my faith. But that was the first time I had a confidence in being a Christian, or studying the Bible and the Scriptures and seeing what they have to offer for my life, and seeing what it means to love God, to love my neighbor, all those things that I continued to pursue through high school, through this youth group, and through this Bible study at my house. And since I've gotten here, through InterVarsity Christian Fellowship and church and people and Mass and a bunch of great stuff.
Thank you, Chris. Again, looking at our 4 students and their paths, to understand the different nuances of the faith, I think it's only right to pay attention to some of the worship and some of the ceremony involved in each of their respective faiths. So in that area, I'm going to turn to you, Justin. And Justin, when you go to temple, you wear a yarmulke.
Correct.
And when you get in there, and I'm Catholic, I should probably let you know the moderators. Baggage. Not baggage. When you get in there, you do certain ritualistics and you pray in a certain way. Can you walk us through what a temple experience would be like when you go there?
Sure. I guess you start off, a lot of people are confused by the name temple. Is it a synagogue? I guess if you wanted to, the safest term, I guess, would be synagogue. I go to temple. There's different types of I don't know, levels, or what you want to say, but there's more conservative, stricter forms of Judaism as you get higher up, and they pray in a synagogue. Where me and my family we're Reformed Jews, so it's a little less strict. We'll put the yarmulkes on inside the temple, and when I was a kid, my uncles always used to joke to me that the reason we wore those was because all Jewish men are bald. But though that is sometimes the case, the reason you wear them is because when you go into church, it's kind of like taking your shoes off in some holy places, but it's just a deference to God, a sign of respect. And It's an opportunity to sit down. There'll be a rabbi at the stage. I guess you could make the comparison of a rabbi to a priest, although the difference is, I think I would assume in Catholicism or Christianity, you'd want that priest to lead service. In Judaism, it's interesting. You do not need a rabbi to lead you in prayer. Rabbi is basically just a teacher. Rabbis can marry. A temple provides a house for them, and they're kind of a leader in the community more than anything. So it's a little different than a priest, but for the most part, where I grew up, the rabbi would lead us in prayer. And there's similar parts to Judaism that there are in other religions too.
You read from texts?
We do read from text.
What's that about?
Well, it's a chance to, a lot of times in Jewish prayer, you won't mention God's name directly, but it's pretty much, you follow there are really no main tenets, but it's a chance to focus on God. And a lot of the prayers are in Hebrew, so a lot of the prayers, it just focuses on how God is eternal, how there is only one God, things like that in temple. But the focus is on that. It's interesting, and just like, there'll be songs in Hebrew in the text, but for the most part, I think what the services follow, just the rabbi will lead you in prayer, kind of like a priest would, or like something in a different religion, but that's basically the drift of a temple service.
Great, thanks. Anna, students that live in Fitzaga have to walk to the basement to find their place of worship. You have to get on the B line, and you have to go down by BU, I believe. Is that correct?
True.
And you find your mosque.
Right.
Can you explain to the crowd a little bit about what the environment of the mosque is like, and in your own style of worship, how you come to find God in the mosque?
Like you said, we have to go down the B line. And I also mentioned earlier that there's only like 75 Jamaat Khanas in the United States. Ismailis represent like 1% of all Muslims, which is 10 to 15 million. And that's not a lot. So there's a Jamaat Khana made in Boston because Boston has a lot of great universities, and a lot of people wanted a place to go to worship, and they just really felt uncomfortable coming to college if they didn't have a place to worship. And so there was one made, and it's mainly college students. It's a lot of kids that go to Harvard or MIT or going to grad school, undergrad school, I go there and I really feel at home in the sense that there are a lot of students that are intellectuals, there's professionals, and it's great to go there and have like a sense of community and family there because it's so small and everyone understands where you're coming from. But as for like the way we worship, there's morning Jamaat Khana and evening Jamaat Khana, and it happens every day, depending upon where you live. I guess it doesn't happen every day in Boston because of the fact that the head of the mosque is a professor at Harvard, and it's hard for it's hard for students to come. Also, in Dallas, it's open every day. My parents go every morning and every evening. And morning mosque is there. You have your prayer, which is called the dua, once in the morning and twice in the evening, and then you have bandagi, which is an hour of pure quiet time. And it's from 4 in the morning to 5 in the morning. When I was in Dallas, I'd go time and time again to the mosque at between 4 and 5, and sit there. And it's through the Ismaili faith, we believe that through bandagi is a very personal time with God. Ismailis believe that your faith is with God, and it's a personal faith and a personal search. And in this hour, you're trying to find God as much as you can, and as wholeheartedly as you can. And you sit there and you pray, and you sit there and do what you think you can. You don't sit there and you can, I guess, think about anything. The reason it's at 4 to 5 in the morning is because everyone's sleeping and there's really not any worldly matters going on. You're not, work isn't going on. You're not at school worrying about classes. So you're just trying to be there and in solace. You're not really supposed to talk about what actually happens between 4 and 5 because it is a personal relationship with God during the hour, and it happens every morning. And even if you can't make it to the mosque, they or Jamaat Khana, they ask you to try to wake up anytime between 4 and 5 and try to pray and try to see if you can reach God. The dua happens at 5 at the end of the hour-long hour-long period of quietness, and then dua happens at 7:30 in the evening and 7:30 and 8 o'clock. And it's a 6-part dua, and some of it comes from the Quran, and it's Arabic. Well, actually, all of it comes from the Quran. It's in different parts of the Quran, and it's in Arabic. And we recite the dua, and then we recite ginans, which we sing. I guess hymns, is that what it would be? Hymns, and hymns, I guess, is what I sorry. And then songs, and recite ginans, and then there's farmans, which is something that the imam says whenever, and it talks about like leading your everyday life and how you should live your life, and things about the Quran, and says you should interpret the faith solely towards yourself and through what the Quran says, but don't look at the text literally. Look at it in a way that, you can't look at the text word for word, because then you'd be stuck in like 632 AD. This is 2004, and you kind of have to like learn to adjust with time. And then we have a dua part, since it's 6 parts, and a dua part meaning. So you know that everyone knows what each part means, and then you have the second part of like the second dua. So.
Great. Thank you. Chris, in our conversations, we talked about worship and prayer, and we talked about having good energy and finding a real good space. And you mentioned music. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with music in your prayer and what it means to you?
Yeah.
Cool.
Definitely. Church, I guess, is a big part of my faith experience. Church every Sunday, long church.
How long?
Well, it depends, I guess. Usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours. The church I go to now, an hour and a half. No, 2 hours. I don't know, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Because church is not the same every week. Like it's not set up. The methodology of church is not the same.
It's not routine?
It's not routine. It's routine in the sense that, we worship through song. There's a sermon or a homily. Sometimes we recite prayers, but it's not done in the same order. And sometimes not all of it's done.
How do you know what's going to happen?
You don't. There's certain things that you can expect from going to a church over a long period of time, your home church, and then there's that little bulletin that tells you the order of things when you show up. But as far as song is concerned, so worship is a big part of the evangelical church, and I think I would identify myself with the evangelical church.
What does evangelical mean?
Well, evangelical, in its historical context, I think was kind of broke off as like a revival movement to generally get people more excited about pursuing God and pursuing Jesus in their life. But now I think evangelical would mean there is a lot more song, there's a lot more music, there is... In the United States, I think there's a lot more emphasis on like our individual salvation and our individual relationship with God, and I identify with that fully. I have both an individual and a social relationship with my God. But back to your original question, song happens. I love to pray, and I love to pray to Jesus and to my God in various ways. And one of them is through song, through worship, through singing psalms, like the psalms in the Scripture, and through singing hymns that were written by people in the church today, both Catholic and Protestant, and people in the history of our church, both Catholic and Protestant. I guess I would say just Christian people, and songs that are created today by musicians that are living right now. But song also allows me to be very meditative about my prayer. I think it allows me to concentrate on the words of the song and connecting with my God and being silent in prayer. So that's some of the ways that song is helpful.
Thank you. This is a general question for anybody on the panel. Is there a phrase that you could come up with that may only make sense to someone else from your faith tradition? And what would that be? Some kind of phrase that only another so-and-so would understand.
I got one. Dude, your scapular's showing. A scapular it's kind of a piece of religious jewelry, if you will. It has two parts, one you wear in the front and one you wear in the back. It's like a necklace, but it goes two ways, and it has like a special like prayer on it, and then I think a picture of either the Virgin Mary or Christ, but I just think scapular's a funny word.
What was the question?
Funny word.
Funny word.
Funny word or phrase.
Or phrase.
Evangelical.
Anna, you had quite a few. Can you just repeat, like, did I can't even say it. It's the D word with the dividend.
I don't know. I was talking to Mike about one. People, not necessarily Muslims, but Pakistanis and Indians will definitely understand this. Most Pakistanis and Indians wear shalwar kurtas to the mosque, and it's the actual outfit's name that you wear.
What's it called?
Shalwar kurta. Kind of sounds funny, yeah. It's just funny. I think about when I walk, like when I'm home, my mom sees Shalatsky's delis. I don't know if y'all know what Shalatsky's is, but when she was making fun of it and she didn't know how to read it, she called it Shalwar kurta deli, and it's just that's what sticks in my mind whenever I think of outfits to wear, when I wear my outfits. So.
Okay, a little comic relief for you all. I want to move to a little bit of an area about prayer and relationship with God. We've talked about methods of worship a bit already, but I want to specifically focus on how you pray. And Genevieve, when you think of your prayer, and when you think of your prayer at the best, at the strongest, what would you say the environment is like, and what would you say your experience is like?
That's a good question. I would say for me, when my prayer experience is the greatest, it doesn't have to do with reciting the Our Father. It doesn't have to do with the Hail Mary. It doesn't have to do with the Rosary. It doesn't have to do with any preset prayer in any respect whatsoever. In fact, some people might not even consider it praying. I would say the times when I feel the most at prayer and probably the most spiritual is when I'm having a one-on-one conversation with somebody that, and I'm not talking just like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I bet it was fun. But really talking about matters of ultimate importance. Conversations maybe surrounding faith, why I believe what I believe, or maybe why a friend believes what they believe. I guess for me, it's that prayer hasn't been the traditional recitation ever for me in my entire life. You know, when I do say prayers, I very much think about what I'm saying. But when I think back to when I was younger, I kind of had this inability to open up to people, and so I would pray through journaling. It's always been more of a conversation thing with me, something that I need somebody to throw ideas back at me for my prayer to happen. And so I guess I've had a very unconventional way ever since I was younger. I guess that's weird, but it works best for me, so try it sometime.
Thank you. Justin?
Well, for me, there's really two ways of prayer, and I think this question is pretty neat because everyone, ultimately, their method of prayer is a little bit different. It's a little bit personal. But for me, there's two ways. It's one is by myself, and for me, it's usually at the end of the day just to reflect on the day, and it's really an opportunity to just be honest with God, speak the truth with God. A lot of times, when even personally, when I pray, you always pray for strength, or you pray for that someone gets better, or you do well in this exam, or kind of that God looks out for you. But more than anything, it's an opportunity to just be honest with God and things that you did well, things that you could do better, ways you could be a better person. And to touch on what Genevieve said and a little bit what Chris said, Chris was, he found prayer through music, Genevieve through journaling and through others. And really that's the biggest thing for me too, is prayer through others. When you find people in this world that are kind, that are giving, that are loving, that's a wonderful way to share your, I'm not talking to somebody about Judaism, but we're just living life together. And I think that wherever God is, he's got to be pleased with that we're sharing with one another, we're kind to one another, and ultimately we're loving to one another. And I think you can break that down for roughly any religion, which is pretty nice.
Chris, who is Jesus Christ to you? How would you describe your relationship?
Oh, that's a nice question.
As creator and as father, I guess, to be simple. Do you want me to elaborate?
Please. What's
Jesus-
your relationship like with Jesus? How would you describe it?
I would hope I could describe my relationship with Jesus as intimate. I think, to go back to prayer a little bit, I love to pray, and I love to pray in many different ways.
What's your favorite?
I think my favorite way to pray would be by myself, in silence. I believe that the Holy Spirit, which would be the spirit of love between God the Father and God the Son, that's active and in our midst all the time, is very active when I pray to my God, active inside of me and active around me. And so when I pray specifically to Jesus, Jesus' friend and Jesus' brother, and Jesus as someone who loves me and cares for me and guides me in my life, I would say that the Holy Spirit works through my prayer and my relationship with Jesus to give me an intense sense of peace and joy and guidance and comfort and compassion and all those things that us Catholics and Protestants know as the fruits of the Spirit. And they become really real in my life when I sit in silence by myself, or in communication out loud or in silence with Jesus.
Thank you. Anna, how do you bring God into parts of your daily life, not just in the mosque? How is God with you through your daily life?
Things a lot of Muslims do, and I personally do, is when you're starting, like anything you start, you say Bismillah, which means in the name of Allah.
You say what?
Bismillah, which means in the name of Allah, which is Allah is just the Arabic word for God. Or when you eat, especially like the first thing you say before you eat is Bismillah, and then when you finish eating, you say Shukranallah, which means thanks to God. Or and things you say that like Inshallah, in the name of God, or like in the hope that God will make it happen. Stuff like that. So you call out to God. One of the things that's emphasized in my life is if you have any time, call out Ya Allah, O God, Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, and Ya Ali, O Ali, to give you solace and to give you comfort to know that if anything's going wrong or anything, if you need strength, that you'll be able to get it by praying.
Thank you. Genevieve, we're in a very confusing time with the Catholic faith, especially in the Boston area. That you come up and you sit on a panel and you proclaim yourself a Catholic woman. Why do you do that?
Why do I stick with the Catholic Church?
Yeah.
That's a very good question, and something I've thought very, very much about, especially in the past 4 years. I guess I would say originally I was Catholic because that's how I was raised. As I became an adult, or at least what I'm an adult now, I don't know, I decided that there are parts that are fundamental to the Catholic faith that I truly do believe. Things that are very, very central to the faith, such as the Trinity, the Incarnation, basically the laundry list.
You're going to explain all these for us later.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Afterwards, we'll talk about it. But pretty much everything that's included in the Nicene Creed, which we recite at Mass, there are things that are fundamental to the Catholic Church that I hold as truths in my heart. And I guess the best way to say it is that Catholicism for me is the religion that I have found that has given me the most answers so far about why the world the way it is, why my life is the way it is, why people act the way they do. Yes, recently there have been a lot of problems in the Catholic Church, although I shouldn't say recently. Ever since its founding, the Catholic Church has had some major problems. But that's no reason for me to actually leave the church. There are some things within the tradition that I don't agree with. I don't agree with the teaching necessarily on homosexuality. I don't agree with the teaching on priests can't be married. I'm probably opening a big can of worms here, but those are peripheral. They're not the central core beliefs of the Catholic faith. While they may be held in pretty high regard, they're not, my disagreements with them are not reasons for me to leave the Catholic Church. I have found the most comfort, the most love for myself within the Catholic Church and growing up within it. So I guess that's probably one of the reasons why I choose to remain to be a Catholic.
Thank you. Anna, what's the most rewarding part of being Muslim for you?
Being a smiley Muslim, I guess the most rewarding part would be the fact that it is a personal faith and a personal thing. Like, I choose to do it, and I, the thing is, I go to my Jamaat Khana every Friday evening at 7 p.m. And it's, sometimes I have to wait for the tea 20 minutes, sometimes I have to wait for the tea 10 minutes, sometimes I don't even have to wait for the tea. And then it's a 20-minute tea ride. So it's, travel time can vary from 40 minutes to like an hour and a half sometimes. And that's actually a long time if you think about it, plus the service and everything. I just like the fact that it's a personal thing that I'm doing, and no one's really forcing me to do it. My parents don't call me every Friday and ask me if I'm going to Jamaat Khana, and they're like, why aren't you going? It's something that I choose to do, and it's, like I had mentioned earlier, it's something that you interpret when you read the Quran, and when you read lines from the Quran, and you're like, well, I think God means this, and I think that's how he wants me to interpret it. One of the things that a lot of people mention about is women dressing modest. In the Quran, like, there's a phrase that says people should dress modestly, and modest, I think means the time and the place that you are. Something I like, that's one thing that really keeps me faithful to my religion and keeps me faithful in general, is something that I can interpret it to my personal life and the way I am.
Thanks. When we talk about vocation, and Chris, I want to gear this question for you. You mentioned earlier that you're studying to be a doctor.
Yeah.
How would you say or describe your faith as being an integral part of your vocation, if it is? Is it?
It is.
Why? How?
It definitely is, and I'm still trying to figure out why and how, but I'll try to answer the question. I believe that we all should be pursuing holiness in our lives and should be pursuing our God in our lives, first and foremost. But I also believe that we should be pursuing others, and we should be serving others, and that's why we have this word vocation, and that's why we have jobs, and that's why we study here at Boston College. So I want to be a doctor because I have a personal conviction to serve the poor. I think that's a calling that Jesus calls us all to, serving the poor physically and the poor in spirit. And I feel that I've specifically have the desire to serve the physically poor, specifically the sick. And if you want to serve the sick, poor, it's good to be a doctor. And I'm interested in medicine, I'm interested in science, and I also believe that God blesses us in many ways, and that he blesses us a lot of the ways in the desires of our heart, the desires of the things that we want to do and that we want to pursue. So I definitely don't think that we should all be doctors and we should all be serving the sick that are poor, but I think that in my relationship with my God, he's taught me that a lot through other people, through himself, and through the scriptures.
Thank you. Well, we've been up here for a while, and all the questions so far have been up to me, but I want to make sure that we make enough time before we end to open it up to you all. And in speaking with our panelists, they've all been very receptive to take any kind of questions that you ask. There may be some questions, though, that you ask that if they're of a certain personal nature, that they may wish just to kind of talk to you one-on-one afterward. But at this time, and we'll let you know if one of your questions perhaps is one like that, there's a microphone here in the center of the room. As we spend our last few minutes together, I would invite anybody to come up if you have any questions about an area that I haven't covered. Obviously, we just started to scratch the surface on 4 different faiths. I would like to invite anybody up to go ahead and address the panel as a whole, or perhaps a specific member. Anybody?
And if nobody has questions,
I think somebody's coming. Here we
keep
go.
talking.
Frankie's coming.
Oh, here comes Lauren.
What about the 5-foot people, you know?
David,
All
you wanna
right.
help?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Chris, you were just kind of hitting on this, and I'm sort of interested. I was raised in a Catholic family, but I would consider myself more of a non-denominational spiritual person. But something I really admire is sort of, like you were saying, Chris, the life of Christ and how he serves the poor, whether it be, like you said, the physically poor, spiritually poor, and like Matthew 25:40, like serving the least of our brothers, or working with our brothers and sisters. I'm interested in the phrase, like, a faith that does justice. So in each of your faiths, is this an integral part of your faith? And how does your faith as a whole work for it? And how do, if it's a part of your personal life, like, how do you work for it?
Great question.
Faith with justice.
Do you want me to elaborate more also?
No.
You guys go ahead.
Chris, you want to start this off? You want to start us up? Yeah, I'm kidding. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Faith and justice in our lives. All right, I guess I'll start personally. For me, it deals more with daily interactions with people. I don't want to make myself to be like a personal saint, but I guess, you know, when I see something going wrong that shouldn't be happening, you know, try and put a stop to it. I guess I could say because of my Christian faith, because I am Catholic, the background for me is the golden rule, if you will, which is love your neighbor as yourself. And so I guess for me, coming from the Catholic perspective, that the justice that I work for is directly related to the love of Christ that I try to convey to others. I guess the ultimate goal for Christians to work for is justice and peace and love, and try and treat everybody equally as being creatures of the same God. I guess that's my personal opinion. Chris? Justin?
Do you guys mind if I jump in? Is that right? Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I think with Judaism, with no real set doctrine or dogma, it's a little open-ended, and there's so much focus on actions. I like your question. I really think God calls us to be authentic, to be truly who we are, to do away with duplicity, with pretense, things like that. And in Judaism, with so much focus on our actions, part of true holiness is simply that search for authenticity. And I think I've mentioned it before, maybe not tonight, but it's no coincidence that the words whole, W-H-O-L-E, holy and healthy, all have the same root word. To search to be holy is to search to be healthy and whole. So if you can try to do that in your everyday life, keep that a part of your faith, and a part of the way you're just with others, I think you're in pretty good shape.
The word Islam itself means peace, and like incorporating into everyday life, I just kind of look for the same things they've all mentioned. It is kind of like the golden rule. That's what we're taught, you know, and it's obviously not called the golden rule. It's just they say it to us, and it's just treating others the way you'd want to be treated, and trying to make a positive impact in the world, and trying to take what you've learned in your knowledge and take what you've done and incorporate it in other things that you do, and let others know about, like, you know, what you do. Like, for example, something I did was the Ramadan break fast. I don't know if you heard about it. And it was just something so that people could understand what it's about, learn what it's about, but not even preach it, just so that they know and appreciate what other people go through and understand what other people go through, so as to learn other faiths and about other people a lot more than just like being like, oh, she's Muslim, and that's it, you know?
Great.
Thank you.
Our next question. Kat.
Put this back to the normal height. Hey guys, I guess we've spoken a lot about the differences between all of these religions, and it's for anybody. If you could speak a little bit on the core, like, similarities, that even though they are specific different religions, what may or may not bind all of them together?
One thing I was just talking to Chris about earlier was your writing about was the concept of God. He kept saying "my God," and I was wondering, what does he like? Was he meaning at a personal level, or was he meaning at like, does he truly believe God is just his God, like a Christian God? And something that does, I feel, is similar to all of us, is that we believe in the same God. Now, how we get about it is kind of different, but that God is the same for all of us, and that Muslims believe in the same God as Christians, any kind of Christian, and Jews. So that's one thing I think that's really similar to all of us. One thing I can say that's similar to Muslims and Christians that lots of people don't understand about Muslims is we do believe in Jesus, just not as God's son, and that's the difference right there, is we do believe in Jesus as a prophet, rather, and we do believe that he did start the Christian faith and stuff, but that he isn't God's son. So, I mean, that's a similarity and a difference in one.
I think that the scriptures of both the Torah, or what Christians call the Old Testament, and the Quran all have a lot of similarities in what they preach, and what they're speaking to. And all of our faith backgrounds here have a foundation in those books. As holy books, and as books that should be guiding our life, and a book that both the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church that we all look back to, whether we do or whether our leaders do, to create, for teaching or for the way we live our lives. And there's so many similarities between all of them. We have the exact same thing.
We have 7 more books.
Did I think that we should be...
It's true, we do have 7 more books, but I was kidding. Sorry.
That we should be going back to that. I really do feel, both also to the Quran, like when we have, conflicts, conflicts of war, in both like internal and external, nationally and internationally, I think that we should be looking and emphasizing those similarities, because so much and so many times we hear the differences immediately,
Great.
Sorry, just to add on to that very quickly.
Sure, go for it.
When he was talking about the book, one thing that we're definitely taught is the phrase al-Kitab, which means the people of the book, and that where the people of the book refers to people of the Bible, the people of the Torah, and the people of the Quran. It doesn't refer to just the people of the Quran. So that's like something when it comes to the similarities that people do. We all believe in the same concepts.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Thank you,
I want to make time for some more questions. Next question.
Okay. Being Catholic myself, I guess I can really only speak about what I know, so this is kind of directed towards you, Vive, but everyone else, please feel free to respond.
Sure.
One of the things that I've struggled personally with the Catholic Church is everyone always talks about the Catholic guilt and the use of guilt to motivate people to go to services, to act a certain way, to follow certain traditions. And how do you deal with that? Or, how do you view that in the church? Is that something that you accept too? And I don't know about, your personal faiths too. You were saying before, Anna, that, your religion is very, I do it on my own, which is very impressive and wonderful that you take that proactive approach towards your faith. And I don't know how you guys deal with that as well, so.
Wow, the topic of Catholic guilt. Every time I call my father, it's more like, why don't you call more? When are you coming home? Why'd you go to Boston? When are you coming back to Nashville? I'm like, Dad, calm down. He's like, it's the Irish in me. It's the Catholic guilt. I was like, right. No, I definitely understand what you mean about the Catholic Church has all these teachings, and yet sometimes the experiences in our lives don't always match up. And when they don't match up, you do feel guilty that you're not living by, the book, if you will, the proverbial book, not just the Bible. Dealing with that can be hard. There's one thing that I would like to point out, though, is that the Catholic Church teaches that you must obey your conscience, and depending on how your conscience was formed, may sort of help you figure out why you feel guilty about certain things. For example, personal example, my entire life I was taught homosexuality was wrong. By the book, it was a sin. Love the sinner, hate the sin. I personally, not very good at separating sinner and sin, because let's be honest, they both have something fundamentally to do with each other. Coming to college, though, and I would say breaking out of my bubble from home, if you will, my conscience has changed because my experiences have been different. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm acting against my conscience. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm sinning. But what it does mean is that you have to take all of your experiences into account. And for the specific instance of Catholic guilt, when we're younger, we are trained that you are supposed to believe certain things because you're a Catholic. As you grow older, you start to, think about these things. The Trinity, what the heck is that? It's a mystery. You can't even understand it. There's some things about the Catholic faith that you really have to sit down and think about. And the issues of, morality and all of the areas where that sort of Catholic guilt comes in, you have to go on your experiences. You have to judge, was this a wholesome, good experience? If it was, it can't necessarily be all bad. So you have to go for yourself personally on your experience, but also don't forget about that tradition and don't forget about that scripture, because it definitely does have something to say about it.
Thanks.
Yeah. I can go on forever.
I just want to make sure we can get through the questions before we end. So if we want to go to the next question.
Sure.
All of you shared really great stories of how you came to realize your own faith and kind of get closer to a certain religion or a certain set of beliefs. But for people who don't really find and kind of coincide with a certain set of beliefs like Judaism or Catholicism or non-denominational Christian or something like that, where do you think that inhibits people in any way, or do you think it's extremely important to come down to a final faith? Because I know tons of people are atheistic and just really haven't found a certain God or faith or anything really. Do you think it's important to have that, and do you think that if you haven't found that you're somewhat lacking something? Kind of more along the question of where's faith in society today?
That's an interesting question. I think that the biggest thing, and I'd never want to speak for anyone but myself, but for myself, it's nice to have that faith background. But what do you mean in terms for most, if people they can't relate to religion or they're atheists? What did you mean exactly? I'm sorry. Throw it back at you. Yeah.
Kind of I guess people who haven't really found a faith or are still thinking about it. I think a lot of people are on a faith journey, more or less, or on a journey to find some sort of idea or guidelines that they follow by in their life. And a lot of people have found a certain faith to follow by, and that's what they base who they are on in a lot of ways. But for people who are kind of just more or less up in the air, not with a concrete set of beliefs, do you feel that that's important to have that a concrete set of beliefs in your life?
So you're asking, in our personal opinions, of course, do you believe that a faith is necessary in order to live a full and, I guess, happy life? More or less?
Somewhat. In order to live life to the fullest, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, as a child, and even at times now, you look around at Boston College or I went to high school, or sometimes when I was a child, I went to Hebrew school, which was a supplement kindergarten through 6th grade to help prepare me to be bar mitzvahed. And sometimes you look around and you see people so passionate about their faith and so enthusiastic about it. And sometimes you sit back and say, geez, I wish I was that passionate. And sometimes I'd look around. Temple services were on Friday nights, and as a child, I was very fortunate. My father had season tickets to the Boston Celtics. And for those who are around here, the Celtics were, that was the biggest show in town, Larry Bird and Kevin McHale. And the biggest nights for me were Friday nights because of Celtics games. But, Saturday morning, or next Monday or Tuesday in Hebrew school, I think, geez, I wish I had that same kind of, affinity for religion as much as other people. But I think the big thing is, you learn in life, you figure it out on your own. There's no timeline. Maybe you'll never figure it out, maybe you will, but I guess if you keep trying, hopefully, I don't know what you guys think, but hopefully we just come to it on maybe not our time, but on God's time.
Should we keep moving?
We're going to take the next question and one more, and then we're going to have to end because we're just about out of time.
Can I respond real quick?
Absolutely.
Sure. Mike, I think that our cultural norms that we grow up in for sure shape our faith life, and Protestants also feel guilt, for sure. But I absolutely love being a Christian, and I absolutely love experiencing the love of God. And So in my opinion, I would very much encourage someone to seek after the love of God and not live life without faith or an atheistic life. Just because it's my experiences, and I think I'm not speaking for them at all, but I think all our experiences have brought so much into our life, whether it be joy or compassion or whatever it be, that I think I would encourage people to seek after that.
Great. Cool.
Jen, during when you talked about like personal like relationship with God and prayer and stuff like that, you didn't happen to mention like the Eucharist or something like that, and I was wondering how that plays into your faith life. And also, Chris, you had touched on personal holiness, and I was wondering like what you guys feel like being in an environment where we put so much emphasis on like social justice that sometimes it seems as though morality is kind of given a back seat, and I was wondering how that incorporates into your faith.
Sure. The Eucharist, it is probably one of the fundamental beliefs, no, it is one of the fundamental beliefs of Catholicism as well. And I would definitely say it plays a very important role. When I was speaking about my faith experience and how I pray individually, that is probably the most time when I personally feel connected with God. The Mass is it's a different, to me, it's a different type of prayer. First of all, it's a community prayer, so it's me with the rest of the Catholic Church. It's not just myself. But yeah, that is a very intimate time in which a person of the Catholic faith can be with God, and it definitely does play a role in my life. But me being a not so perfect person by the nature of being a human being, usually sometimes find myself very distracted at Mass, and it really, I mean, yes, the Eucharist and the consecration it plays a huge part in my Catholic experience, but I feel like sometimes, as horrible as it sounds, it can just be depending on the day. Sometimes you have really bad days, and that's just part of being human. So I guess the whole prayer comment before was more specifically about when I'm sort of in the prayer zone and can think more directly about my faith, and I'm not distracted. But I would definitely say, yeah, the Eucharist plays a huge part in my faith. Do you want to talk about social justice, morality?
Yeah, personal holiness and social justice. I think personal holiness is the foundation for social justice, and I don't think morality should take a back seat. I definitely don't think that we know fully what morality is as Christians or as human beings. I think we're constantly learning more and more about what it means to like pursue the good and to love in life in so many different issues. But for sure, I think that we should be pursuing holiness in our lives, because I think an outgrowth of that is that we just begin to hate injustices, and we try to do everything we can to resolve those.
Great. And we'll have one final public question, and if you have more questions, feel free to come up afterward and maybe ask the panel individually.
Sure, thanks. I had a somewhat technical question about ecumenicalism and how maybe you could bring things together, but actually in response to Mike's question, I was wondering if each of you could answer somewhat quickly. It's been obvious that each of you up there has had difficulties with your faith before, whether it be personal or more in the community-based difficulties, and it's hard to explain things aren't necessarily clear, and all that kind of thing. Is there a specific reason why each one of you stick with it? Like, why do you do it? What's the reason?
I'll start with that one. I mentioned earlier, I like the fact that my faith is very personal and very open to interpretation. I think that's probably the main reason I stick with it, is because I like the fact that I read parts of the Quran and understand them, but I don't have to look at the text and be like, oh, I can't do this because the text says no. It's kind of open to interpretation, kind of open to what I believe would be right for myself, and then what I feel as though how God would judge me accordingly. I think that's probably why I stick with being who I am and my faith.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why I pursue my faith life. One, I think God asks us to pursue it, both in the Old Testament and the New. In His commandments, He said, love the Lord your God, first and foremost. So I guess that's the first thing about why I do it. but definitely not the only reason, because the second reason is it brings so much peace and joy and love into my life that I would never want to not pursue it.
For me, 2 reasons. 1, because I have to, and 2, because of the challenge. If you've ever, and it's kind of crazy, have you ever walked outside at sunset and looked up in the sky and seen all those million difference of colors? I'm one of those people that doesn't believe that that was just by accident. It was by, 1 in 1 billion, jillion, trillion, whatever, possibilities of that coming together and happening. I have to believe that a God exists. And in response to my specific faith, I think I stick with Catholicism because it challenges me. It's not something that I can accept very easily. It's not something that I learn in Sunday school and then I sit back and I'm like, you know what, that's great, warm fuzzies. It's something that challenges me every single day of my life, and it challenges me to grow. It challenges me to question what I believe. It challenges me to become a more fuller, that's a little superlative, to become a fuller human being. So challenge, and I have to.
And I'll be honest, I haven't had the easiest time with my faith. There's times when I've questioned it, and but it's just like relationships, I think, if you make that analogy. The best things in life, and I kind of like the challenge analogy, and that greatness, that wonderful feeling with God is found through that challenge. If it were easy, I don't think it would mean that much. But I think the things in life that you work the hardest for are the most meaningful. And sometimes you just wish that there'd be some instance where God could part the clouds and just make things happen. But, a lot of times we wait for that sign from God. But on the other side of things, maybe God's just waiting for a sign from us that we're ready to take that next step and enter into a relationship with God. So it's, I guess, the challenge that makes it great.
Well, great. I just want to be mindful of the time, and if you'd like to come up afterward, you could perhaps ask a question in the